What's up, everyone? It's Brian from the Exact Cybersecurity and IT YouTube channel. Welcome to another video where I'm going to discuss with you today some Cybersecurity 101, keeping your computers and devices safe from cybercrime. In today's world, cybersecurity, in my opinion, is more important than ever. You may disagree with me and drop a comment down below if you do. Cybercrime is on the rise here in 2023, and there's different levels of cyber criminals out here in the news all the time about these millions of dollars of ransomware payments. And the average person can't really relate to that. Why? Because it doesn't impact them. They don't ever think that, hey, I'm going to get hit with ransomware and have to pay millions of dollars one day. It doesn't even enter their mind. So things do happen out there at a very low level. Cybercrime is just like regular crime. There's low-level crimes, robbing convenience stores, things like that. And there's high-level crimes where millions and millions of dollars are stolen, maybe through corporations and things like that. But crime in the cyber world happens at the same level as it does in the real world. So keep that in perspective. Cybersecurity to me is obviously important because that's the main thing we do here at Exact Cybersecurity and IT is we defend businesses from cyber criminals. Personal responsibility, I'm going to talk about a lot in this video, or a shared responsibility that everybody has kind of a role to play in this game to protect their data and protect their finances and their money from being exploited by a cyber criminal. Across the globe, cybercrime is going to cost the world over $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. Look at that like a market in business, right? That's a $10.5 trillion market that a group of individuals are going to go into because they have the skill. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Me and a lot of my colleagues, we possess skills that we choose to use for good every single day. And there's nothing stopping me from, other than my conscience and me being a good human being, from waking up in the morning and deciding, you know what, I want to hack today. I want to become a hacker and I want to make money doing what's known as black hat or bad techniques, criminal activity to make money. And here you have a whole entire market of criminals who are going to make $10.5 trillion every year in 2025. That's up from $6 trillion in 2021. So the problem is not getting better. And the problem that a lot of people don't see coming, that I do see coming, is that every day there's more and more skill, there's more and more talent going to the dark side, realizing that there's more money to be made over here in this $10 trillion world than there is defending businesses because business leaders are deciding not to spend money on this stuff. That's the reality of the world we live in. Until business leaders' attitudes change around how much they need to spend on cybersecurity, this is the trend I think we're going to continue to see. So this represents the greatest transfer of economic wealth in history, posing severe risk to the innovations, economic growth, and prosperity of many nations. By 2025, cyber criminals are going to be causing so much damage that nations are going to be impacted by this, not just businesses. A cyber attack has occurred every 11 seconds in 2021. That's down from 39 seconds in 2019. They're predicting that in 2025 that the frequency of attacks will increase to every 2 seconds. So we went from every 39 seconds there was a cyber attack. So just think of malware, business email compromise, not just ransomware. In 2019 it was 39. Okay, 2021 it was 11 seconds. And then if we just dial that in a little bit deeper, they're expecting that ransomware attacks alone will happen every 2 seconds by 2025. And a ransomware attack is expected to cost the world about $265 billion. So of that 10.5 trillion I mentioned, about 265 of that is going to be from ransomware. So that means over 800 trillion is going to be for other things like business email compromise. 1 in 4,200 emails is a phishing attempt. Microsoft Office file formats make up the most dangerous file extensions, and they're used in nearly 38% of all malware attacks. A typical data breach usually costs a company about $3.86 million on average, and it takes 280 days to identify and contain a breach. That number is going up for companies, and the amount of time it's taking cyber criminals to get on your network and deploy something bad is shrinking. Keep that in mind too. There will be about 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs globally in 2021. That's up 1 million from 2014. And this indicates a growing need for cybersecurity professionals and emphasizes the importance of training and awareness for all employees. So you're not going to be able to fix this problem by hiring people. You're not hiring your way out of this problem, and you're not going to be able to partner up with companies to get out of this problem either. It's going to be a combination of that and making sure you have internal cybersecurity awareness training, but also you're building a culture of cybersecurity in your company so all your employees understand that they play a role in protecting what you're doing. Cybersecurity services are predicted to exceed 1 trillion cumulatively. I mentioned earlier, the market for cybercrime will cost the world 10.5 trillion. Yet in the same study, it's only expected that global spending on cybersecurity products and services is going to be 1 trillion. So we're spending 10 times more on the problem after we get hit than we are spending on dealing with the problem from happening in the first place. So take that for what it is, but that's the data. 1 trillion spent on protecting, 10 trillion spent on dealing with the cyber criminals. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this video today. So the number one thing you can do to not have to pay a cyber criminal and be part of that $10 trillion is update your damn computer. Run your Windows updates. Make sure your software that you install on your computer is fully up to date, because not only can Windows or Mac OS have vulnerabilities that cyber criminals love to take advantage of, but so can software. Google Chrome is like a favorite of hackers. Google Chrome always has tons of vulnerabilities. Make sure you keep these things, especially things that access the internet, make sure you keep them up to date. Again, your antivirus is up to date. I'm going to get into that in a minute here, but everything on that's running on your computer needs to be updated, and you need to have a process, even if this is your home computer, to update it. Even if it's your cell phone, those apps need to be updated. Your Android or your iPhone needs to be updated. Usually prompts you when this stuff needs to be updated, but you can turn these prompts off as well. So you need to make sure that your phone is being regularly updated if you want to stay protected. Having really good endpoint protection, that's what we kind of call it today, not antivirus software. Really good endpoint protection that has a couple different layers of security. I like the ones that don't just rely on signatures to save your butt. I like the ones that also either have some kind of AI or have some kind of heuristics to look for anomalies in things that are happening on your computer, which are usually indicative of a criminal being on your computer or inside your network. You can use things like Windows Defender, but I'm not a huge fan of those, especially if you don't have other tools tied in with that can kind of give you better visibility on what Windows Defender is seeing and detecting. There's a ton of other products out there. If you want my opinion on them, you can hit me up in the comment section. But a good third-party endpoint protection, internet security product, you have to evaluate them, because some of them are really bad and they suck and they slow your computer down, but there's other ones that are really good and they don't do that stuff. So if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer specific things about antivirus or endpoint protection or internet security software down below. Using strong passwords, using unique passwords, and definitely use a password manager. Password managers are basically built so you don't have the same password anywhere. Hackers love to hack other entities. This was a big thing with LinkedIn when they were hacked. LinkedIn had tons of accounts and passwords exposed, and people were using the same password on LinkedIn as they were to log into Facebook and other social media sites and their bank, and hackers were figuring this out and they were getting into people's accounts as a result of this. Understand, when you use a password on a site, that site could be breached, and then your password is then exposed to cyber criminals. And if you use that password in other places, they can just try to log into those places with your password. So using a password manager is pretty basic these days. Definitely use one. It makes it a lot easier to fill out all those long forms when you're shopping, you're setting up accounts on the internet. It does make it a lot faster, but it also helps you keep an inconsistent pattern of passwords that somebody can't guess. And the only thing you really need to do is keep a really strong master password to unlock that software or that password manager. And if you do that and you keep a nice secure master password that nobody can guess, then you're pretty golden when it comes to mechanism of protecting your passwords and not getting hacked. If say LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok get hacked and your password gets gets exposed, you're not running around having to change all your passwords all over the place, which can be time consuming and annoying. So invest in a password manager. Let me jump into maybe some mobile device talk here. I already mentioned updating your computer operating system and your mobile device. You want to make sure you're doing that, especially for Android users, because Apple controls this. That's why I say that. If you didn't know why Android and the Apple Store are monitored or handled differently, Apple really controls their apps and vets them from a security standpoint, among other things. Where Google, it's a little bit easier to get apps on the store without that vetting process. So you could potentially have an Android phone and go to the App Store, type something in, and legitimately download what you think is an app. And it's really laden with malware that's stealing all kinds of information and sending it back to scammers and cyber criminals. A couple of things you can do when you're looking at an app and whether you should download it. See how many times it's been downloaded. Look at the reviews. Make sure that the publisher is the correct publisher. Sometimes you're looking for something that's created by Google and it's really not. It's created by somebody else. It has a similar name. It has a similar logo. Things like that are things that you want to look out for. And quite frankly, Google the app first before you install it. If it's something like, I know people, they like to download things like the teleprompter apps, and there's other little apps that they perform a nice little utility for you. But you don't think twice about who made it, who published it, what was our process for developing the software, could it potentially be hacked? That's another thing that can happen. Like somebody else's app could be hacked by a third party and they don't even know it, or their server where their app is being hosted. There's a whole host of problems that could come up if you download a sketchy app from the App Store. So if you have any questions about that, drop it in below. I hope I was clear on that, but there's a lot to the Android store that you need to be aware of. Just don't go downloading everything. Everybody should have some kind of protection on their screen, whether that's biometrics, whether that's a PIN, whether that's a pattern, but just don't make it easy. Don't make it easy for somebody to get into. If you lose your phone, there's a pretty good chance that you have some pretty private information in there. And if you don't have one, or you make that password simple to guess, or it's just like maybe 1111 because you don't want to deal with remembering or putting in different numbers or what have you. Biometrics is the easiest way. Most phones that are coming out today have this. I would highly recommend using biometrics over any of the other options. But if you do use a PIN or a pattern, just make sure it's not easy to guess. So let's jump into some other things that you can do besides protecting your computer, your devices. What about what you're doing online? Make sure you're always visiting a website that has HTTPS at the top and has that little lock in the browser. A couple years ago, most of the browsers that are out there standardized on this, that they were going to warn you if you went to a site that didn't have a certificate. And they give you some pretty good indications in that browser bar at the top to tell you like, hey, this site is safe. This owner of this website took the time to secure it with an SSL certificate, and we're showing you that in the browser. That's essentially what it means. You just want to make sure that you're visiting sites that have that, and ones that don't, you really want to stay away from those. And as I mentioned with the internet security software, if you buy really good internet security software, typically it's going to even block those pages from even showing up in your browser, because that's what that software does. Like if you go to an unsecure site, it's going to block it. So make sure that you're practicing safe email practices. Learn how to identify phishing emails. Check the sender, number one. That's the biggest telltale sign. A lot of times the sender address, it might say somebody's name that you're familiar with, but the email address is coming from like Gmail or something like that. The grammar and the spelling, however, that's becoming harder and harder to find because now we have AI, and these criminals are using AI to craft these emails, which is reducing the amount of spelling and grammar mistakes that we're seeing around the English language when you get these spam emails. Other things you can do is if you have a company, you can tag things with like an external tag to tell people like, hey, this did not come from somebody inside the company. It came from the outside. A lot of insurance companies are requiring this now for cyber insurance. So there's a lot of different things you can do to spot a phish, but just remain vigilant. And if you suspect that somebody sent you something and you weren't expecting it, it, I would say pick up the phone and call them. Don't reply back, because a hacker could have control of their email. So if you reply back and say, hey, did you really send this to me? They're going to reply back and say, yeah, I really sent it to you. You don't want to do that. You want to pick up the phone, reach out to the individual through another way, send a text message, however you can get a hold of them, and say, hey, I got this email from you. I wasn't expecting it. Did you send this to me? And they're either going to say yes, or they're going to thank you because you just helped them realize that their email account was hacked and under the control of somebody who's trying to scam people. Those are some tips you can do to protect yourself around email. And then making sure that you are really fully aware about what connecting to Wi-Fi networks really means. I did a whole video on this, and you can check it out, where I talk about how hackers get into your email by bypassing MFA. And one of the things that they do is they intercept what's known as a token on a Wi-Fi network. What I tell people all the time is, if you didn't create that Wi-Fi network and you didn't secure it, you didn't set it up yourself, I wouldn't connect to it. And people are like, what do you mean? What if I go away? I go to a hotel. I got to connect to Wi-Fi. I go on a cruise ship on vacation. I got to connect to the Wi-Fi. Okay, don't take your work computer. Don't take something with sensitive information on it. Don't do sensitive transactions. If you want to hop on a burner phone or a phone that you don't use for anything important, you want to connect that to the Wi-Fi network and visit social media sites and post your pictures from your vacation, fine. But don't connect to Wi-Fi networks and start conducting business transactions. Don't start logging into your email. Don't start doing that stuff on any Wi-Fi network, even if it has like the security and you have to put in a password to get on it. It's still not secure. No Wi-Fi is secure. I'm going to tell you right now, like, all Wi-Fi out there can be hacked in some way, shape, or form. And like I said, if you don't control that Wi-Fi, if you didn't set it up and you don't know the security of it, and quite frankly, if your Wi-Fi is broadcasting, it's probably not secure. I tell people all the time is, don't broadcast your Wi-Fi. It's one of the options you can do when you set it up. You don't need to have it broadcasting to set devices up. There's always an option to type in that Wi-Fi network manually and connect to it that way. Yeah, it's a little bit harder, less convenient, but I always say, if something's more convenient, it probably makes it less secure. So avoid using public Wi-Fi, especially open ones, at all costs. And if you really need to travel a lot and get on the internet, get a hotspot or turn your phone into a hotspot. Those are better from a security standpoint. Their speed is just as good as hopping on a Starbucks Wi-Fi or a hotel Wi-Fi. So that's, some ways that you can start protecting yourself: computer, phone, some things you can do on those devices to make sure that you don't do something on those devices that is going to cause a problem for you. Let's talk about advanced measures or things that you might want to think about doing to protect yourself. So I'm going to say I'm indifferent about this one, but I figured I'd throw it out there just to kind of educate you on it, because I get the question a lot. I get the question of VPN. From a layman's person standpoint, there's two different types of VPNs that I would classify. There's these commercial ones like NordVPN, or I think Norton, and they all have kind of their own flavor of VPN services. If you buy internet security software, it probably is going to come bundled with some kind of VPN service. That's one type of VPN. And then you have like your corporate VPNs, where people say, I have to dial into the VPN for work, to get to certain resources and files and stuff. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they get those two confused. We're just going to focus on the commercial VPNs. We're not talking about work and corporate VPNs in this particular discussion. So I just wanted to make that clear. Those commercial VPNs, where they basically take all your traffic and they route it through their servers. Really good idea to use, especially if you're going to not take my advice and not connect the Wi-Fi network. I would recommend, if you're going to connect to a public Wi-Fi network, that you have one of these VPNs installed and you do turn it on, because it will encrypt the traffic from your device to the VPN provider's server before it goes out to the internet. So if anybody, like a hacker, is kind of like on that Wi-Fi network trying to steal information, at least your traffic would be encrypted, and it's probably going to be very difficult for them to unencrypt it. Those are the scenarios or situations I would recommend using a commercial VPN product. But if you can avoid needing to use them, don't use them. I mean, you really don't need to use them if you're connecting to trusted networks that you know are safe. If you're connecting to untrusted networks, then I would say use these tools. Next thing, make sure you're putting multi-factor authentication on everything you possibly can. Even if the site doesn't ask you to set it up, go into the settings and see if they offer password. Most websites today are offering multi-factor authentication, but I see so many people today losing their Facebook accounts or Instagram accounts, simple stuff like that, simply because they don't have multi-factor authentication turned on. Your email should have multi-factor authentication on, your bank account should have multi-factor, investment accounts, anything sensitive, and your social media, because hackers and scammers look at social media profiles as capital. They can get to your contacts, your friends, and use your good name to try to attack and exploit your friends. That's kind of the name of the game that we're seeing now. And we're seeing it happen a lot. So it tells me y'all haven't bought into the multi-factor authentication yet. But multi-factor authentication is just a stronger level of logging into something than just using a username and password. At the end of the day, if you do end up having a problem, if somebody ends up stealing your files, or even if your computer crashes or your phone falls in the toilet, having a backup is the only thing that's going to save your butt and get you out of not having to pay lots of money for either data recovery, incident response, and help with the ransomware, or paying the ransom to these criminals. Backups save you a lot, and having them is really smart. iPhones and Androids back up automatically. Make sure you set it up, but also make sure it didn't stop working at some point. Check it. Just like you're checking for your phone and your computer for updates, check your backups. Make sure they work. Make sure your computers are backed up. Lots of free options out there like Google Drive and stuff like that. If you have a Mac, you can use obviously iCloud to back up your stuff, but turn those things on, make sure they're working, and make sure they're actively syncing, because sometimes those softwares tend to stop working. You might go a month or 2 or 3 and then something happens and you go and you find your backup wasn't running. If you own a business and you have a big backup system and procedures, somebody should be checking those too. Those are the things that are going to protect you and save you at a very high level. And these are just a couple things that I gave you to help you out to start protecting your devices and your computer. But at the end of the day, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Like I said, it's not a concern of your company, your government, other people. Everybody plays a role in securing themselves, their accounts, and making sure that they don't perpetrate the problem or enable these cyber criminals to continue to do this. We really want to make cyber crime a really unattractive place for young people to turn their skills and attention to. Unfortunately, we're not there. We're in a world where a lot of young people are turning into criminals very quickly, especially in countries that aren't as economically well off as the Western part of the world. We're seeing significant numbers of people joining the ranks of cyber criminals, and that's only going to make it harder and harder for guys like me to defend businesses who, again, are spending 1/10 on prevention than they are on what they're paying cyber criminals. That's where things are at right now. That's the world of cybersecurity. I hope you've learned something. I hope you are learning how to keep your computers and devices safe from cybercrime, but it's not easy. I showed you a lot of statistics on where this is going, on where we're at today, and hopefully you take some of the things in this video and go apply them right now into your life, and you don't become a victim of these thugs who are out there digitally wrecking people's lives and wrecking people's bank accounts and just creating a lot of havoc for people, when if they just took these simple measures that I laid out in this video today, you're making it a lot harder for these guys, which makes it a less attractive job and career for these young people to gravitate towards. So I'll catch you all in the next video. I hope to hear from you in the comments section about this video. I really enjoyed doing it, and we'll see you in the next one.